Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening the file on a name that I think every single person listening has heard.
Oh, for sure.
It's buried somewhere in the dusty corners of your brain, probably right next to the Pythagorean theorem and, I don't know, the mitochondria.
Yeah.
We are talking about Hammurabi.
The king of Babylon.
Right. And when you pull that file, there is usually only one thing written on it, one phrase, an eye for an eye.
The ultimate slogan for revenge. It's what everyone knows.
Exactly. We have this image of him as this ancient, stony-faced judge who carved out these brutal, unyielding rules for civilization. But here's the thing about the source material we're looking at today. The historical records, the archaeological findings, the letters.
Yeah.
That image is, well, it's not wrong, but it's so incomplete. It's like judging a movie by the poster.
It misses the actual plot completely.
And the plot here is wild because the lawgiver thing, that's the end of the story. The beginning of the story is about a guy who started as a total underdog.
A complete unknown, really.
We're talking about a minor king in a chaotic world who manipulated, thought, and patiently waited his way to becoming a living god.
And that is the paradox that really drives this deep dive. Hammurabi is remembered as the paragon of stability. He's the guy on the wall of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right. A symbol of law and order.
But the empire he built, it was incredibly fragile. I mean, it crumbled almost the second he died.
Which forces us to ask, was he actually a successful state builder? Or was this whole Babylonian empire just a house of cards held together by his specific personality?
That's the political question. But then there's the theological one, and this is where the story gets really weird. Thousands of years after he dies, his legacy sparks a massive controversy in 19th century Germany.
The Babylon Bible debate.
The Babylon Bible debate, yeah, that challenged the Bible itself.
We're definitely getting to that because the drama there is top tier. But let's rewind. Let's set the board. The year is roughly 1792 BC. Hammurabi inherits the throne from his father, Sin-Mubil. Now, I think when we say Babylon, we have a specific mental image. We think of the Hanging Gardens, the Ishtar Gate, a massive superpower.
A world-ending empire.
But that is not what Hammurabi walked into, is it?
Not even close. If you look at the geopolitical map of 1792 BC, Babylon is a small fish in a tank full of sharks.
A small fish. Babylon.
A very small fish. It had been an independent city-state for about a century, founded around 1894 BC, but it was completely overshadowed.
So if we're looking at this map, who are the sharks? Who are the big dogs on the block?
Okay, so imagine Mesopotamia as a four-way chessboard. It's tense. To the south, controlling the river delta and the Persian Gulf trade, which is where all the money is, you have Larsa.
Larsa, so they're the economic powerhouse.
They control the money, yes. Then, to the northeast, controlling the upper Tigris River, you have the kingdom of Eshnunna. These guys are strong, very militaristic.
Okay, so Eshnunna has the muscle.
And then, looming in the east, across the Zagros Mountains, you have Elam.
Elam keeps coming up in the sources. They seem scary.
They're the heavyweights. They aren't technically Mesopotamian. They're the foreign power from the highlands that keeps raiding the plains and demanding tribute. Everyone is afraid of Elam.
Okay, and the fourth player?
To the north, you have Assyria, ruled by a really powerful king named Shamshi-Adad I.
So Babylon is surrounded. You've got Larsa south, Eshnunna northeast, Elam east, Assyria north.
Completely hemmed in. Babylon controlled a little bit of territory around the city itself, maybe the minor cities of Borsippa, Kish, and Sippar, but compared to Larsa or Elam,
a nobody.
Babylon was negligible. If you were a betting person back then, looking at who would rule the world, you would not bet on Hammurabi.
Which puts his later success in a totally different light. He wasn't born on third base. He was barely in the stadium. So he takes the throne. He's young. He's surrounded by enemies. What does he do? Does he come out swinging?
That's the brilliant part. He does nothing. Well, nothing aggressive. The sources are records for the first few years of his reign. They're surprisingly peaceful. For the first decade, he focuses entirely on internal improvements.
Like what?
He heightened the city walls of Babylon, he expanded the temples, he dug canals, basically a lot of public works projects.
To the untrained eye, or maybe to his enemies, that might look like passivity. Like he's just trying to stay quiet and not get noticed.
And maybe that was part of it. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it wasn't passivity, it was consolidation. It was strategic patience.
What do you mean by that?
He knew he couldn't win a military confrontation yet. His army wasn't ready, his treasury probably wasn't full. So he made Babylon a hard nut to crack defensively, and he waited. He waited for his neighbors to make a mistake.
He let them tire themselves out fighting each other.
Exactly. He played the long game, and eventually the chaos came to him. This leads us to the turning point, the event that kicked off what historians sometimes call the War for the Four Corners.
And the catalyst here is Elam, right? The heavyweights from the mountains.
Correct. The Elamites decided to make a power play. They came down from the mountains, attacked the kingdom of Eshnunna in the northeast, and absolutely wiped them off the map.
Just like that. One of the four major powers is gone.
Gone. Elam destroyed their cities and imposed direct rule, but then the Elamites got greedy. They tried to pull a very Machiavellian move. We actually have letters that show this.
Oh, this is good. What did they do?
They secretly tried to incite a war between Hammurabi in Babylon and the king of Larsa in the south.
So they're whispering in Hammurabi's ear, hey, Larsa's plotting against you, and telling Larsa, Babylon is coming for you, hoping they'll destroy each other.
Precisely. It's a classic divide and conquer strategy. They wanted to weaken the two remaining powers so they could sweep in and take everything.
But it didn't work.
No. And here's where it gets really interesting. Hammurabi and Rimsin, the king of Larsa, they figured it out.
I love that moment in history, the realization that, wait a minute, we're being played.
They caught the Elamite agents, so they did the logical thing. They formed an alliance. Hammurabi and Larsa agreed to join forces to drive the Elamites out of Mesopotamia. On paper, this was a formidable coalition.
But alliances in the ancient world, they're shaky things, aren't they? I mean, these guys were rivals 5 minutes ago.
Extremely shaky, and this is where the betrayal happens. The war begins, Hammurabi mobilizes his army, he marches to the front lines to fight the Elamites, and Larsa simply doesn't show up.
They ghosted him in a war.
They ghosted him. Larsa failed to contribute any significant troops to the war effort. They stayed home, probably hoping Hammurabi would get crushed by Elam, leaving Larsa as the last man standing.
That is cold, but it backfired, didn't it?
Big time. Because Hammurabi managed to win anyway. With help from other smaller allies like Mari in the north, he crushed the Elamite invasion. But the moment the dust settled, the patient builder persona vanished. He was furious.
I could imagine. He just fought a war for survival while his ally sat eating grapes in the south.
He didn't waste a second. Around 1763 BC, immediately after neutralizing Elam, Hammurabi turned his entire army south. He accused Larsa of failing the alliance, which was true, and he invaded.
And Larsa presumably wasn't ready for a battle-hardened army that just beat the Elamites.
They crumbled. Hammurabi conquered Larsa, and just like that, he controls the entire lower Mesopotamian plain. The Persian Gulf, the trade routes, the rich agriculture, it's all his.
But he didn't stop there. The notes mention a domino effect.
This is where we see his ruthless efficiency. To fight in the south, he had asked his northern allies Mari and Yamhad to send troops.
Right.
This meant the north was temporarily weaker. Once he secured the south, he realized he had the momentum. He pivoted north.
He turned on his friends.
In the game of empires, there are no permanent friends. He marched north and finished off the remnants of Eshnunna, and then he turned on his longtime ally, Mari.
Mari had been with him the whole time. They helped him fight Elam.
They did, and the king of Mari, Zimri-Lim, had been a close correspondent of Hammurabi. We have their letters. They were friendly.
As friendly as rival kings can be. But Hammurabi saw an opportunity for total consolidation. He conquered Mari. Some historians debate if it was a violent conquest or a surrender, but the result was the same. Mari was absorbed. Babylon burned the palace of Zimri-Lim to the ground.
Talk about a lesson in realpolitik. He uses the ally to beat the enemy, then eats the ally.
Then he engaged in a protracted war with Assyria in the far north. It took time, but eventually he ousted their leadership and forced the new king, a man named Mut-Ashkur, to pay tribute. So in the span of just a few years, he goes from being a minor king of a city-state to uniting almost all of Mesopotamia.
From the Persian Gulf to the mountains, it's an astonishingly rapid consolidation of power.
Yes, and he adopts the title King of the Amorites and, more grandiosely, King of the Four Corners of the World.
King of the Four Corners of the World.
That implies a universal rule. And I guess this is the pivot point. Once you have universal rule, you need a universal set of rules to govern it. You can't just have one set of laws for Babylon and another for Larsa if you want a unified empire.
Exactly. And this brings us to the artifact itself, the code.
Distill. Now, most of us have seen pictures of this in textbooks. It's that big black stone finger, right?
Yes. It's a diorite or basalt stele, about 7.5 feet tall. It's imposing. It was originally placed in a public square, likely in the city of Sipar or maybe Babylon itself. It was meant to be seen.
Let's look at the visual first. At the top, there's a carving. Describe what's happening there.
It depicts Hammurabi standing. He's standing before a seated figure. Shamash, who is the sun god, and more importantly here, the god of justice.
Okay.
And Shamash is handing Hammurabi a ring and a staff.
The ring and the staff, those are the symbols of kingship.
Kingship and justice. The staff is to rule. The ring, or some scholars say it's a measuring rope, is to build and measure right from wrong.
Wow.
The visual rhetoric here is incredibly important.
How so?
Hammurabi isn't saying, here are some rules I came up with during a brainstorming session.
He's saying, I just got back from a meeting with God.
Exactly. These laws come from the god of justice himself. It's a divine mandate. It makes the laws unchallengeable. You aren't breaking Hammurabi's law, you're breaking Shamash's law.
And below that carving, we have the text, 282 specific laws.
282 case laws. And specific is the right word. It's not a Bill of Rights or, a philosophical text. It's a list of, if X happens, then Y is the punishment.
And the scope is wild. I was reading through the notes. It covers everything.
Everything. Flood management, calendar changes, livestock care, marriage, divorce, inheritance, slavery, commerce, medical malpractice.
I saw one about builders, law 229.
Ah, yes. If a builder builds a house for someone and does not construct it properly, and the house which he built falls in and kills its owner,
then that builder shall be put to death.
There it is, the famous harshness. But before we get into the brutality, I want to clarify something. We often call him the first lawgiver, but that's a myth, isn't it? It is a total myth. He was absolutely not the first.
Okay, so who came before?
We have the Code of Ur-Nammu and the Code of Lipit-Ishtar, which predate Hammurabi by centuries. We have tablets of laws from long before Babylon was a superpower.
So why is Hammurabi's the one we remember? If he wasn't the first, what made us different? Was it just better marketing?
Marketing played a role, sure. The stele itself is an incredible piece of propaganda, but there is a major philosophical shift in the content.
Okay.
The earlier Sumerian codes like Ur-Nammu focused primarily on compensation.
Compensation, like paying a fine.
Yes. If you knocked out someone's tooth or broke their bone or even in some cases committed homicide, the penalty was a fine in silver. It was a transaction. You paid for the damage you caused.
Money for damage. That feels surprisingly modern, like a civil lawsuit.
It does. But Hammurabi shifted the focus away from compensation to physical punishment. This is where the lex talionis comes in, the law of retaliation. Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth.
Why the shift? Why go backward from pay me silver tooth, let me break your bone? That feels like a regression.
It's debated, but it lightly reflects the changing culture. The Amorite dynasties, Hammurabi's people, were perhaps more martial, more tribal in their sense of justice than the older Sumerians.
It's a different worldview.
A different worldview. Or perhaps Hammurabi felt that in such a vast, newly conquered empire filled with different peoples, he needed a deterrent that money couldn't buy.
Fear?
Fear is a powerful unifier. If a rich man knows he can just pay 50 shekels of silver to punch you in the face, you might do it. If he knows he's going to lose his own eye, he hesitates.
But there's another innovation here that I found really surprising, considering how brutal the punishments were. The source material mentions the presumption of innocence.
This is crucial. It's one of the first times we see this codified. The code suggests that both the accuser and the accused have the opportunity to provide evidence.
Wait, really? So you can't just accuse someone?
No. You couldn't just point a finger and have someone executed. You had to bring witnesses. You had to bring a contract. Law number 1, the very first law, states, if a man accuse a man and charge him with murder but cannot prove it, the accuser shall be put to death.
Wow. Talk about high stakes for filing a lawsuit. If you lose, you die.
It discouraged frivolous accusations. But the deeper point is that the state was taking control of the process. The code codified revenge into state justice.
What does that mean, codified revenge?
It limited what a wronged person could do. You couldn't just go burn down your neighbor's house because he stole your sheep. You had to go to the judge. The state decides the punishment, and the state carries it out.
So the state monopolized violence.
Exactly. It prevents the blood feud. In a tribal society, if you kill my brother, I kill you, then your cousin kills me, and it lasts for 100 years. Hammurabi said, no, the state kills you, and then it's over.
That is a profound shift. It brings order to chaos.
And there's one more marketing genius move Hammurabi made with the code, the language.
It wasn't written in Sumerian. I thought that was the official language for this kind of thing.
It was. Previous scholarly works, legal codes, religious texts, they were often in Sumerian. That was the Latin of the day, the ancient language of the elite and the priesthood.
So what did Hammurabi use?
He had the code written in Akkadian.
Which was?
the daily language,
Yeah.
the language people actually spoke in the streets of Babylon, the vernacular.
That's huge. That means, well, assuming you could read, which I guess most people couldn't.
A tiny fraction, yeah.
But if you could read, you didn't need a priest to translate the law for you.
It was a move toward accessibility. But more importantly, it was part of his broader program to standardize a Babylonian culture. He was saying, we all speak the same language and we all follow the same law. It was nation building 101.
So we have the conqueror and we have the lawgiver. But then as we move into the later years of his reign, things start to get a little messianic.
To say the least. It gets very strange.
We mentioned in the intro that he became a god. Not just chosen by God like the sigil shows, but actually divine himself.
That's right. This was a unique honor. He was declared a god during his lifetime. Usually that happens after you die, if at all.
How do we know this? Did he wear a badge? How does that work?
We see it in the names. We find records of people changing their names to things like Hammurabi Ili, which translates to Hammurabi is my god.
Wow. Imagine naming your kid, the president is my god. That's a whole other level of devotion.
It shows the level of cult of personality he achieved. And the hymns written about him during this time are intense. They don't just call him a king. They use imagery that is almost monstrous.
Monstrous. How so?
They call him a great dragon, the Basmu.
A dragon,
Yeah.
not a shepherd.
Well, both. They also describe him as a net stretched over the enemy and a fierce eye that gives death sentences.
That is terrifying. It's not the benevolent grandfather image at all.
He cultivated a dual image. On one hand, he is the shepherd, the bringer of peace, the protector of the weak, the man who brings justice. On the other hand, he is the warrior, the dragon who crushes resistance. He wanted to be loved and feared in equal measure.
It seems like he wanted to be everything to everyone, the father figure and the destroyer. But here's the tragic irony we teased at the start. He builds this massive reputation, he becomes a god, and then he dies around 1750 BC. And what happens?
The unraveling is almost immediate.
Really, that fast?
He passes the reins to his son, Samsu-Iluna, and instantly the empire proves to be incredibly fragile.
Why? Was the son just incompetent?
Not necessarily incompetent. He actually fought very hard to hold it together, but the structure Hammurabi built relied too heavily on Hammurabi. The personal alliances, the fear he inspired, the specific relationships with tribal leaders that didn't transfer automatically to his son.
It's like the moment the teacher leaves the room, the class goes wild.
Worse. Rebellions sprung up everywhere. You had the Sealand dynasty rising in the south, so he lost the Persian Gulf almost immediately. You had the Kassites invading from the northeast mountains.
So all those sharks he defeated, their cousins came back for revenge.
Within a generation, Babylon was reduced back to being basically a minor state again. It lost almost all the territory Hammurabi had conquered. And then the final blow came in 1595 BC.
The sack of Babylon.
The Hittites. They came all the way from Anatolia, modern Turkey. They marched in, sacked the city, stole the statue of Marduk, the city's main god, and ended the Amorite dynasty completely.
So in terms of political longevity, Hammurabi's empire was a flash in the pan, a blip.
Politically, yes, but culturally, it was eternal.
How so? The city was sacked, the dynasty was over.
Because even though the Hittites sacked the city, and then the Kassites took over rule for the next 400 years, they didn't erase Hammurabi. They respected him. The Kassites kept the code. They revered him as a model ruler.
So even the conquerors looked at his laws and said, actually, these are pretty good. Let's keep them.
Exactly. Even 1,000 years later, kings in the Near East were claiming Hammurabi as an ancestor to legitimize their rule. He failed to build a lasting political state, but he successfully built a lasting idea of kingship.
That is a powerful distinction.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of his legacy, we have to fast forward now, way forward, to the 19th and early 20th century, because Hammurabi pops up again in a place you might not expect. The theological debates of Germany.
The Babylon Bible controversy. This is a pivotal moment in the history of archaeology and religion. It's a huge deal.
Set the scene for us. The Code of Hammurabi is rediscovered in 1901.
Right. Yes. French archaeologists found it in Susa, Iran.
Iran? I thought it was in Babylon.
Remember the Elamites?
The heavyweights from the mountains.
Centuries after Hammurabi, they raided Babylon and took the stele as war booty back to their capital, Susa. That's where it was found.
Ah, stolen goods. Makes sense.
So it's brought to the Louvre. Scholars start translating it. And they notice something shocking.
The similarities to the Bible.
So specifically, the similarities to the covenant code in the book of Exodus. The phrasing, the eye for an eye principle, the specific case laws about goring oxen or slaves, it looked suspiciously similar.
And this is where Friedrich Delitzsch enters the chat.
Friedrich Delitzsch was a superstar of German academia, a famous Assyriologist. In 1902, he gave a lecture in Berlin. And not just to anyone, he gave it in front of the Kaiser himself, Wilhelm II.
No pressure.
And in this lecture, he dropped a bombshell. He argued that the Mosaic laws, the laws of Moses, the foundation of the Old Testament, were directly copied from the Code of Hammurabi.
Oof. That must have gone over well with the religious establishment.
It caused a massive scandal. You have to understand, the prevailing belief was that the law of Moses was a direct, unique revelation from God to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai. Delitzsch was saying, no, it's just a copy-paste job from a Babylonian king who lived centuries earlier.
It challenged the divine origin of the Bible. It basically said the Bible is just Babylonian fan fiction.
And that turned into a massive public debate. The Kaiser eventually had to distance himself from Delitzsch because the backlash was so severe. But then, sadly, the controversy took a much darker turn.
How so?
As the years went on, into the 1920s, Delitzsch's arguments spiraled into anti-Semitism. He stopped just being an academic comparing texts. He started arguing that the Old Testament was contaminated by Babylonian influence.
Contaminated. Where was he going with that?
In his book, The Great Deception, he argued that Christians should eliminate the Old Testament entirely because it was just cheap Babylonian knockoffs, and that this would somehow reveal a true Aryan message of the New Testament.
Wow. So he took an archaeological observation, these texts look similar, and weaponized it into a hateful ideology.
He did. It's a tragic example of how history can be twisted to serve a political agenda. But if we step back from Delitzsch's craziness and look at the modern consensus, what is the actual relationship between Hammurabi and the Bible?
Yeah, did Moses copy Hammurabi? That's the bottom line question.
Most modern scholars say no, it wasn't a direct copy. It's unlikely Moses, or whoever wrote Exodus, sat there with a copy of the Hammurabi stele, translating it line by line.
So why are they so similar? Eye for an eye appears in both, word for word.
It's more likely that they share a common ancestor. They both emerged from the same Semitic cultural background. These legal concepts, lex talionis, case law, the way you treat a goring ox, were in the air of the ancient Near East.
So they are cousins, not father and son.
Exactly. They're drawing from the same well of legal tradition. And we have proof of this influence spreading. In 2010, archaeologists found a tablet in Hazor, Israel, dating to the 17th or 18th century BC.
That's right in the neighborhood and right in the time period.
It contained laws clearly derived from Hammurabi's tradition. So we know for a fact that Hammurabi's legal ideas were circulating in the region where the Bible was eventually written.
So he didn't just write laws for Babylon. He set a legal standard or a legal vibe that permeated the entire Middle East for millennium.
Without a doubt.
So let's bring this all together. We've gone from the chessboard of 1792 BC to the lecture halls of 1902 Berlin. What is the takeaway here?
I think if we synthesize the journey, we see a man who mastered every aspect of leadership. He was the patient strategist who knew when to wait behind his walls. He was the ruthless general who knew when to strike and betray his allies.
And he was the marketing genius who understood that power isn't just about armies, it's about perception. Writing the laws in the common tongue, calling himself a god, putting up the huge stone monuments.
He understood that to rule a diverse empire, you need a unifying culture. And he tried to force-feed that culture through law and language.
And the final irony is that while his political creation, the empire, failed, his intellectual creation, the code, succeeded beyond his wildest dreams.
Absolutely. His name is on the frieze of the U.S. Supreme Court building today, 4,000 years later. He is grouped with Moses, Solon, and Confucius. The empire turned to dust, but the law endured.
It really makes you think. We look back at eye for an eye, and we call it barbaric. We think we are so much more advanced. But Hammurabi introduced the presumption of innocence. He introduced the idea that the law should be public, written down, and that evidence matters.
That is the provocative thought I'm left with. How much of our modern definition of justice, the very safety we feel knowing the law is objective and not just the whim of a ruler, do we owe to an ancient autocrat who wanted to be worshipped as a god?
It's a comfortable legal system born from a very uncomfortable source.
Precisely. And perhaps that's the lesson. Progress in civilization often comes from complex, contradictory figures.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into Hammurabi. A huge thank you to everyone listening.
Thank you. Keep questioning the history.
See you next time.